Google Hangout class. It's Thursday evening, 5:30 here in Dublin. Hope if you're watching that you are well. Last week we looked at a few expressions to say if something bothered us or if something didn't bother us. Okay, so I think I spent a lot of time talking about the Windows Phone and a couple of apps that weren't working brilliantly on the Windows Phone. I think I remember saying that I suggested a conversation where a friend asked me, don't you mind not having Instagram on your Windows Phone? And I could respond in two ways. If it wasn't a problem for me, I would say, no, not at all. No, it doesn't bother me in the slightest. No, not in the least. And if it did bother me, I would have to say how much in my answer. Yeah, a little actually. Or to tell the truth, yeah, it really bothers me. And we also looked at a couple of ways of changing how we introduce information to put more emphasis, to put a different focus on what we're saying. So we said, what really bothers me about living in Dublin, because that's where I'm doing this Google Hangout from, what really bothers me about living in Dublin is the weather. If you've been to Dublin, you'll know what I'm talking about. Although I have to say that this summer it has been pretty good for us. There has been plenty of sun. So I have to say that this summer I haven't really minded being in Dublin. Anyway, what I want to look at with you this week is some noun phrases that are, or nouns that we develop from phrasal verbs. Okay, if you have spent any time studying English, I'm sure you have come across phrasal verbs. For those of you really good students, you'll know that come across is a phrasal verb, meaning encounter or find by accident. So I'm sure you've come across phrasal verbs. And they are, of course, a verb with a particle. For example, come, cross. Okay, and it often has a number of meanings. Sometimes it is one meaning. Sometimes it is a meaning closely connected to the verb you're using, and sometimes it doesn't. But apart from those phrasal verbs, which you just need to develop an ability to use as your English improves, there are some noun forms connected to them. And I want to look at some of them with you today. So I'm going to take you now, if you just bear with me. Remember, I used that phrase last week. What does bear with me mean? It means please wait while I go and do something and then come back to you. So bear with me, please, while I open the screen share. Okay. So I'm going to start with some phrasal verbs. Okay. And here's the first one: crack down on something. Okay. And I'm including on my screen share for you in black a meaning, and then in blue a sample sentence so that you can see it in use. Okay. So I'm going to go straight to the sample sentence because I think it's better for you to see the language in action before we kind of try to give you a dry definition. The government in Turkey has cracked down on protests there and arrested hundreds of people in Taksim Square. If you've been keeping abreast of international news, if you've been staying in touch or staying informed with international news, then you will know that there have been protests in Turkey recently. about different things the government has done, which some people in Turkey aren't happy about. And the protests have taken place in a main square in the city of Istanbul called Taksim Square. Initially, the government allowed the protesters to gather, to come together and to protest, and it didn't do anything to stop them. So the government tolerated the protests, or let the protests happen, but then, after a period of time, the government changed its policy, it changed its attitude towards protest, and it decided that it would do things that would stop the protesters from continuing their protests. So when the government decided to do things to stop the protesters continuing their process, that is when the government cracked down on the protest, or cracked down on the protesters. Okay? So what we are saying with the phrasal verb crack down on is that somebody, often a powerful organization, so a government or something, or a police force, introduces repressive methods, okay, methods that will stop people doing things, to stop dissent or illegal behavior. If you're a cyclist, you probably cycle through red traffic lights at least now and again. Strictly speaking, that's illegal. That's against the law. But you probably haven't been arrested for doing that, and you probably haven't been stopped by police for doing that. I do it a lot as a cyclist. I won't go into my justifications, but I do feel justified in doing it. But recently, the government announced that the police are going to start stopping cyclists who break red lights and giving them fines, asking them to pay an amount of money for breaking the red lights. So you can also say that this is a crackdown on cyclists who don't follow the rules of the road. Okay, so in the first example, we had the Turkish government and its police force cracking down on protests, and in the second example, we have the Irish government and its police force cracking down on what it says is illegal behavior, cyclists not following the rules of the road. Up until a point, or up until a time, there was no problem. The Turkish protesters could continue protesting without any problems, and I could continue breaking red lights in Dublin without any problems. But now, because of the new measures introduced, I'm going to have problems if I continue to do that. So that is the phrasal verb crackdown. I'm sorry that it was a bit of a long explanation, but it's not the easiest one to understand. Now here is the noun form that we have, and it comes directly from the verb, the phrasal verb form. So we have a crackdown. Okay, let me just go back to the previous sheet and look, and let's have a look at the example again. The government of Turkey has cracked down on protests there and arrested hundreds of people in Taksim Square. Compare that with the government has begun a crackdown on protesters in Taksim Square. Hundreds have been arrested. I'm going to come out of the screen share and talk to you again now, if I can. This is kind of the same problem we had last time, isn't it? I'm not sure if you can see me or not. Anyway, what I wanted to say is what's important for you to know is that the noun form, a crackdown, is identical to the action expressed by the verb form, crack down on something. Okay, that is sometimes it's what you would expect, isn't it? If the noun form is coming from the phrasal verb form, then why would it be any different? The reality is that the language changes, older forms stop being used, and the forms that were offshoots, the new forms that originated from them, become more used and more prevalent. And so when you're looking at these noun phrasal verbs, it's important to remember that sometimes the meaning is identical, sometimes the meaning is slightly different, and sometimes the meaning is completely different. I've got examples of all of those here for you today. And I want to talk to you about a few more. Okay, I'm going to go back into the screen share now. Now, for some reason, I'm not getting my screen up. Hang on a minute. Right, so I'm having trouble because this is mirroring for me, and I don't know if it's mirroring for you as well. Okay, well, assuming that you can see this and it's not mirroring for you, I'm going to go on now with it, okay? Okay. I hope that you can see what's on the screen now as I continue. Here's the second one, a phrasal verb, get together with, okay? So once again, let's go and look at the example first, the sample sentence. I'm getting together with John for a drink on Friday night, okay? So I'm meeting John for a drink on Friday night. Is there any difference between getting together with somebody and meeting somebody? Well, sometimes when we use meet somebody, there's no plan to meet them. There's no arrangement to meet them. You know, you can say, "Oh, I met John in the supermarket today." We have another phrasal verb to communicate that. It's called bump or run into. So I bumped into John in the supermarket. But you can also say, "I met John in the supermarket." You wouldn't get together with John in the supermarket. So getting together is the organization, an organized meeting, shall we say, with people, either for social reasons or for a specific purpose. Okay, so my example there is I'm getting together with John for a drink on Friday night. Now, what do you think the phrasal verb noun form is? Let's take a look. It's a get together. It's a get together, okay? And this is slightly different in meaning. So with the last one we looked at, crack down on something, on protest or illegal behavior, and introduce a crackdown on those two things were identical in meaning. But now there's a slight difference with the noun get together. And a get together suggests that you don't frequently meet the person you're having a get together with. Okay. So my sample sentence says, we're having a big family get-together this Christmas. We haven't had one for years. And the idea here is that the family doesn't meet very frequently. So when all the family meets, it's a get-together. Okay? It would be unusual to just talk about having a weekly get-together. It's not impossible, but it's the use of get-together is more commonly used to talk about infrequent meetings. Okay? Often special occasions. Also, for example, if you are at university, or even if you have finished your studies and you are now, working, your school life is part of your past. You might be in regular contact with some of your school friends, and you might not. So. if you're not in regular contact with them, you could call them up and say, hey, let's have a get-together, guys. Okay? Right. Let me just go back to another example there that I have. Get together with somebody. And that is, the example here is something that's non-social. So we need to get together and discuss our strategy for the meeting. The other example I gave you there was get together with John for drink on Friday night, which is obviously social. And we need to get together and discuss our strategy for the meeting. Clearly, there's a purpose, the reasons for the I've underlined there the definition of the meeting purpose, whereas with the other one I underlined or did what is important is spending time spent. Okay? Alright, let's take a look at another one. This is a nice one. Pass by. And what's nice about this isn't so much the phrasal verb as the noun form that comes from. Okay? So I'm sure this is something you're familiar with. I pass by that pub every day on my way home, but I've never gone in and had a drink. Sorry, there's a little bit of a typo there. So what I should say is, I pass by that pub every day on my way home from work, but I've never gone in and had a drink. And passing by means walking past a place when going to or coming from a different place. So obviously I'm walking home and I pass by the pub when I'm going home. Okay? Another example would be, I'll be passing by the supermarket later if you want me to get you anything. Okay, so you are going somewhere, and on your way there, you will have to walk past the supermarket, and so you helpfully offer to get something for the person you live with, in case it's helpful to them. Now let's take a look at the next one. A passerby. It's funny here because you've got this passer. The er is a very regular suffix when you want to talk about the thing or the person that does the action. So, for example, I work as a teacher because I teach English, and the printer in your office or in your home study prints documents from your computer for you. So the ER form is very common, but what's not so common is for this by to be attached, to have a preposition at the end of it, and that's what we have with this phrasal verb noun form. So a passerby, and that refers to a person that you walk past or who walks past you in the street. Okay, so my sample sentence says, I couldn't find the place, so I asked a passerby for directions. Okay, and of course, if you are on the street and you don't know the time and you want to know the time, you would stop a passerby and ask them, wouldn't you? Okay, I'm sure a lot of you have been stopped by passers-by who asked you either for directions or to tell them the time or something else. Now, if somebody stops you in the street and asks you for money, they're not passers-by, they're beggars. Okay, so we have a different word because they are usually standing in one position, waiting to ask people the same question every time. Could you spare me €1? Or could you spare me some change? A passerby has to be somebody who is walking on the street, going from one place to another, like you. Okay? And notice the plural form there. We don't say passerbys, we say passers-by. Okay? All right. So here, with pass-by and passerby, we have an identical match, really, in the same way that we had an identical match with crack down, on, and a crackdown. Okay, let's take a look now at this word, hang out, which of course is the phrasal verb that Google has taken this platform from. Okay, and this is something we use in our speech all the time now. So my sample sentence says, if you're free at the weekend, you fancy hanging out. Fancy is a nice way of inviting somebody to do something with you. Okay. And the definition there is to spend time somewhere with somebody, or it doesn't have to be with the person. You could, hang out at home in the evenings. You just spend all your time there. You don't go out. It is an informal expression, but English is a language that tends to be informal 95% of the time in its spoken form, so you will use this a lot, okay? And here is the noun form, a hangout. Of course, we're on Google Hangout at the moment, and a hangout is a place where you spend unstructured time. Now, I hope you don't think my time here is completely unstructured. I hope there's some structure here for you. But moving outside of the Google Hangout platform, it tends to describe a place where people spend unstructured time. So shopping centres are popular hangouts with British teenagers, okay? And I think you can say that there is an identical relationship between the meanings of the noun form and the phrasal verb, okay? Just a little note on that. I mean, now that Google is using this term for the platform that I'm using to talk to you at the moment, the word hangout could evolve. It could take on another meaning and distance itself from the meaning that it has in the language today, which is dominantly one of the where you would spend unstructured time. Okay, and that's just the natural evolution of the language. Okay, here's another one, guys. Okay, keep up. So the phrasal verb. My English teacher speaks too quickly. I can't keep up with him. Another way of saying this would be to say I can't follow him. Okay. But it's very common to use the phrasal verb keep up here. So it's a better, maybe a clearer illustration for you would be if you go running with a friend of yours who runs a lot, and you don't run a lot. Then as your friend continues to run at a speed he or she's comfortable with, you're going to find it more and more difficult to keep up with them. You're going to find it difficult to stay at the same speed that they are moving at. Okay, so we do use it a lot. All right, and often you'll see parents walking with their children in a park or something, and the children will be a few meters or more behind the parents, because the parents will be walking faster. The parents have longer legs than the children. And an annoyed parent who is maybe in a hurry to get somewhere will turn around and say, "Oh, keep up, will you?" Meaning, stay at the same speed, walk at the same speed that I'm walking at. So that is a phrasal verb that we use, and is a noun form, upkeep. And there's no connection here between these two meanings. Okay. And I wanted to bring this to your attention because it shows you nicely that with these nouns that we take from phrasal verbs, sometimes there's identical meaning, sometimes there's a slight difference of meaning, and sometimes there's a completely different meaning. Okay, and here I think we have an example of a completely different meaning. So what is upkeep? It's the maintenance of something to ensure it continues to work, or it's the money needed to pay for essentials. So when I say it's the maintenance of something that ensures it continues to work, I'm thinking of something that requires an object, a machine, or something that requires regular service, because if it's not regularly serviced or fixed, then it stops working for you. It stops functioning properly, and it doesn't do the job you want it to do. So my first example is of a swimming pool. We had a pool, but its upkeep was a nightmare, so we filled it in. If you have a pool, then of course there's lots of things you have to do. You have to change the water, you have to chlorinate the water, you have to remove leaves and other things that fall into the water. You have to fix cracked and broken tiles and lots of other things. Okay, and all of that costs money and takes time. Okay, and the money and the time required to keep the pool in a condition that you can use it in is the upkeep of the pool. Okay, every time somebody spends money and time repairing the pool, or cleaning the pool, or fixing the pool, or changing something about the pool, then they are working on the pool's upkeep. Okay, we also have an example about it's not here on the actual screen share, but parents often talk about your upkeep, the upkeep of their children. Okay, and that means the amount of money they need to pay for the essentials you need, such as your food and your clothes and your schooling, your education, those kinds of things. Okay, so you might want to go and do an Erasmus year in Italy, but your parents will want to know who's going to pay for your upkeep. Okay, who's going to pay for the essentials you will need to live when you are there. Okay, guys, so I think with those examples we've seen that there are these interesting words, nouns, that we make from phrasal verbs. They're very common. Okay, we start with crackdowns. There's the phrasal verb, crack down on something, and then a crackdown. We saw identical meaning. We also saw identical meaning with pass by and a passerby. The plural was passerby, remember? And hang out and hang out. Okay. We saw a bit of a difference, a small difference between get together with and get together. And we saw a complete difference in meaning with keep up and upkeep. There's one other thing I want to bring to your attention, and that is pronunciation. When you use the phrasal verb, you're going to stress the particle more. So it's crack down. Okay? Crack down now. But when you use the noun form, you're going to stress the information part more than the particle. So you're going to have a crackdown. Okay, so I said the government has cracked down on Turkish protesters. There's been a crackdown on Turkish protesters. Okay, similarly, let's get together on Saturday night. Let's get together on Saturday night. Compare that with let's have a get together. Let's have a get together. Okay, so the stress is changing. It's completely the opposite. Okay, I'm passing by. I'll be passing by later. Stop a passerby. Stop a passerby. Okay, let's hang out. Why don't we hang out? We're on Google Hangout. And finally, oh, keep up. And you keep up. Okay, your upkeep. All right. Fine. Noticeably, the last one, the stress is on the same word, but that's just an interesting aspect of it. With the phrasal verb, the stress is generally on the particle, and with the phrasal verb noun, the stress is generally on the first part of it. Okay. Right, guys. That was our Google Hangout today. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you soon. Enjoy the rest of your week and your weekend. All the best. Bye-bye.